Well, good afternoon, financial professionals. I'm Dan Peterson, President and Managing Partner here at E4 Insurance Services, and our entire team would like to welcome you to the BREW, where we build relationships every week. Thanks for tuning in today, and for those of you joining the BREW for the first time, welcome. Now, we like to start our BREWcast by celebrating today's National Day. Today, Wednesday, the 7th of 2024, is National Fettuccine Alfredo Day. Oh, how does that sound good? That creamy noodles with maybe some sauteed chicken in there and grilled. How wonderful is that? It's also National Send a Card to a Friend Day. So make sure you reach out and think of others. Speaking of thinking of others, tomorrow is also National Giving Hearts Day. So please consider a donation to your favorite charity. I'm very proud that my community of Fargo, North Dakota, the last 10 years has raised over $165 million on Giving Hearts Day. And last year alone, it was over $26.1 million that benefited over 562 charities. So let's not forget those that are less fortunate and those charities that need our support tomorrow on Giving Hearts Day. On today's BREW, I'm very pleased to be joined by Dan LaBert, who is Independent Distribution President at FinSECA, which stands for Financial Security for All. And he's also the NALBA, the National Association of Independent Life Brokerage Agencies, CEO. Dan is joining us today for the special 30-minute BREW to discuss the Department of Labor's Rule 3. These proposed changes will have a direct impact on financial professionals and our industry. We encourage you to use the chat box or raise a hand to ask questions. Also, all attendees are in a drawing for a CE voucher and a Starbucks gift card, and we will be announcing the winner at the end. We will open it up with Dan's presentation, and then at the end, we'll have time for some Q&A as time will allow. Dan, great to have you join us today. I obviously have known you for years and get to see you quite often, at least different industry events and at the NALBA annual meeting, and have enjoyed serving. Part of my passion in this industry is advocacy, is giving back, is reaching out and making sure we leave our industry in a better place as we serve our clients and we serve the advisors that we work with, especially in independent brokerage. And I've had the privilege of working with NALBA going way back to the early 2000s when I was exposed to this crazy group of people that were called independent life brokerage agencies. And but it's been a great experience as I went that route and getting to know you. And so welcome today. I know you were just coming off of the Hill. You were just in DC, and you've got some fresh information to share with us and with our advisors. And so without further ado, what are you hearing, and what is this DOL, Department of Labor, Secure Act 3?
Yeah, Dan, thank you. Thank you to Brendan as well. I mean, I love seeing you guys at the LABOR event. You're one of the top LABOR agencies, big part of the culture and strategy that you guys have, and you've been nothing but supportive since day one. So definitely a pleasure to be here and happy to share. Although I wish I was bringing better news, because while my information is timely, nothing is fresh in Washington, D.C. In fact, a lot of it's spoiled. And we just may spoil some people's lunch today when they hear how offensive this proposal that's from the Department of Labor and the process that it's taken place to come out with it, and some of the steps that were intentionally missed, where a lot of people, maybe middle America, will walk away and say that's typical Washington, right? But I'm going to share a lot here today. I'm going to kind of stay as organized as I can, but fresh off of Capitol Hill, you bet. Last week was was meeting directly with members of Congress and Senate. We were able to bypass a lot of their staffs and talk to them directly about how just this whole fiduciary rule 3.0 is going down. Now, just to share a little bit, because not everybody knows about Finseca. Some people say Finesca. I'm a fan of Fresca soda, so this is all good. But it is Finseca. Finseca is 3 years old. It is was an opportunity to bring a number of different associations together, kind of like back in the day when NAHU was 100,000 members strong. But we're just getting going. We're 3 years in, 10,000 members, and it's really rolling. And NELBA is one of those communities represented with Finseca. So the entire independent distribution channel is represented in Finseca. So, and what you're seeing on your screen right now is kind of our North Star at Finseca. It was definitely some motivation on reunifying the profession, but right here is just a brief snippet from Ernst & Young that came out with a study that demonstrates that any consumer who has a holistic financial plan, right? And that could be, that could be a combination of everything, right? Maybe some life insurance, an annuity, some long-term care, whatever it really is. But that combination of holistic planning makes consumers more secure. We can pretty much guarantee that they'll get better outcomes. It'll be notable on the decisions they're making, the brokerage they're working with, and it just further demonstrates the power of consumer choice and working with brokerage. And this is obviously this is an independent study, but it's true. At the end of the day, consumers have financial security because of holistic financial planning. The challenge is that there's a lot of different bias against the notion of financial plans. The so-called experts. My least favorite one on your screen right now would be the white coat investor. And if you ever seen him, that's an interesting one, right? Like they like to talk about Susie Orman and how consumers need to do anything but buy, permanent life insurance. And certainly for Pete's sake, don't buy an annuity-like product, because they all went to the Fisher School of Journalism, and that it's just absolutely outrageous. But it's there, it exists, and these are the headlines that candidly attack our noble profession. The other side of this, in addition to those fun headlines, is a Gallup poll that was done that ranks insurance salespeople slightly above members of Congress and car salesmen. Now, once again, I also find this offensive because this is a notable profession. We do help secure the future of American families, widows, children. And I know I'm sure as hell very proud of when I could say I'm the CEO of NELBA or the president of independent distribution for Finseca, because a lot of the regulation that's already come through, the bad actors are gone. And that while there still are some, there are 99.9% of this profession representing consumers, giving them choice, securing their future in the event of something very, very difficult for them to maintain. I will say this, where DOL is going, this is the point where I kind of sour your lunch. You might want to adjust your annuity sales projections if this goes through. That's not burying the lead. That is the lead, but we're going to get to that and why. Well, like we said, this profession was built to help people. So kind of why are we being attacked? And it just boils down to that, the good example is the CFP board, right? The CFP board, they were at the White House when the president called commissions junk fees. They're championing the support of DOL 3.0 because quote protects Americans from harmful conflicts of interest. And let me be your decoder. The reality is the conflict of interest is the CFP board, right? They're trying to protect their own brand. And it's absolutely outrageous that they focus on a compensation model, which by and large is more efficient delivering a delivery mechanism for consumers than not, right? And the CFP was promoting their board, their brand, and again, they're chanting behind the president about our commissions being junk fees. Well, This is why FinSecca was formed. This is why NELBA merged into FinSecca, right? It's about financial security for all and building scale. We're just, I can only speak from the NELBA point of view, but when I had the absolute pleasure of leading NELBA, and there were challenges in the space that reached the consumer, we just didn't have the scale or the voice to make a difference. And we're like other professions or industry, they could kind of shut down a state capital, or they could shut down the DC Capitol and flood it with calls and emails. Our space just doesn't have that. It became too splintered. So there was an aggressive decision made by a lot of the associations in various ways, but more specifically NELBA, AALU, GAMA, the Forum 400, different groups, kind of the alphabet soup of coming together and forming FinSecca, having this financial security for all. So that's a little bit about just who FinSecca is, but let's talk about Fiduciary 3.0. And again, there's your photo, right? This is Biden. This is President Biden in his agenda and his junk fees agenda, which is also being, applied to other professions. The realtors are being hammered on commissions as well. But what I find more offensive than just the junk fees, which is alone is fairly offensive, more offensive is the fact that while insurance is managed from state to state, governed from state to state, and the importance of state advocacy, as Dan mentioned earlier, and that's why we have other organizations that exist that are experts at doing that. State regulation is inadequate. So mind you, this is after Secure 2.0 was passed, right? Now, I was with members of Congress last week. I was with members of the Senate last week who voted for Secure 2.0, and that was the last attempt at making sure everything is compliant. And then here we are again with LaBert coming out with 3.0. Now, I'm gonna touch on what's on your screen in a bit, but let's just talk about how this all went down, which is what I say is not so fresh coming out of DC. Most proposals that come out of any department, usually it's about a 120-day comment period. Then the department has to go through all the comments, and then there's a hearing or a testimony, like a hearing to kind of hear public comment on it. And that's why sometimes things take as long as they do. Not exactly the most efficient, but it's a fair, level playing field. It's 120 days. There's a hearing. They'll take public comment. That they have to review all of the comments submitted by the profession, the consumers, the public. Well, Department of Labor rolled this out. They roughly announced it on a Saturday morning in September. It came to fruition in November. And then they said there's going to be a 60-day comment period. So already half, or maybe it's 90. Either way, it's less than what it was. Oh, and by the way, this is taking place over Jewish holidays, Christmas, New Year's, the month of December, and then all comments are to be received by January 2nd. So fast tracking maybe a little bit, or is it just because they realized that their first two attempts were failures, and the 10 million Americans that were negatively impacted on 2.0 simply was not enough? They just had to push it forward. And they didn't like the ruling in the Fifth Circuit where they lost 2-1 on Fiduciary Rule 2.0. So while this has a lot of complexity to it, let me talk about how it just impacts, especially the independent advisor, which is at my core of especially being independent distribution. But what they want to do is ban commissions unless you are a fiduciary under the governance of ERISA. Now, I am not an ERISA expert, but ERISA requires you to have a prohibited transaction exemption applied for so that you could then collect this commission. But it also takes 8424, and you can Google that really quick. It's pretty extensive. No longer an option for most of the career advisors. So some of the career advisors who are looking at this saying, doesn't impact me. Wrong, it does. And then they want to roll everybody up under 2022, which is based on the securities profession and how that governs compensation. Now, not only will this add additional, and I'll just say it loosely, paperwork, it's also going to kill people coming into the profession, because let's just take a quick look at this. I'm sure somebody has roughly at their fingertips the total amount of annuity sales that took place in this country last year in 2023 after Secure 2.0 was passed. Oh, and by the way, we're also going to remember that the NAIC has the 40 states as part of their best interest. Their best interest policy to maintain compliance. And look at the growth that annuities had over this past year, with the exception of one state, and that would be the state of New York. And if it's fresh in our memory, Reg 187, which has a lot of these similar references, killed pretty much securing financial futures for New York residents, where with insurance companies pulling out, business going down, it absolutely hammered it. And we're seeing exactly what they did in New York, and now they're trying to take it across the country with Fiduciary Rule 3.0. Now, here's the timeline for this. So as you can see, this is what I talked about it casually. September, they sent that to the White House on a Saturday morning. November, the rule was published in the Register. December 12th and 13th, which was taking place over Jewish holidays, had this 2 days of their hearings. And then the 60 day, I was right, I said 60 or 90, it was 60. Comment period closed on January 2nd. You want to talk about fast tracking something? You want to talk about an agenda driven item? This is it, because this is far different than any other proposal that has come out. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there have been some that have been fast tracked and things like that. But really, the third version of it, after it's already been defeated at the circuit level, at the Fifth Circuit level. So clearly we know this is an agenda. It's being driven from the top on down, and it's being pushed out. And as you can see, January, March, so we're already through the month of January. They're reviewing all of the comments, and we know there were about 22,000 comments. And no, I've not read them all. And then on April 1st, it goes back to OMB for the review. So this technically, and I don't have any insight on the direction of it yet, but this could be effective as soon as May 1st. And if that's the case, all numbers have to be adjusted, and many more Americans than the 10 million that were hurt in 2016 will be impacted by this. Now, what is FinSecca doing? I mentioned the impact of Reg 187. As you can see, I'm not going to read you guys all of the words on the screen. Kind of like to just keep the conversation going. But just, when you have a chance, take a look at the screen, read these 3 columns, and it goes a little bit more deeper dive, a little more specific dive on the impact of Reg 187, and then just look at your annuity sales for the rest of the country in 2023. And by the way, just real quick, this is how FinSecca partnered with some other associations out there, NAFA, NAFA New York, different groups, on the changes that we requested to Reg 187 to help protect consumers while preserving the access to financial advice. Again, just reducing the number of factors to be met for a term policy, ensuring single disclosure, clarifying the definition of materially participate, which is, anytime you leave it open for interpretation, and allow one common producer training. So here's what FinSecca is doing. Obviously, these are just some glam shots, right, of our team. We're on the Hill every day. I'm going to share now what we were just on last week. We have a DOL coalition. A number of groups are a part of it. Libra is a part of that coalition, of which E4 is a part of Libra. So clearly the folks at Libra are all in on this. This is in partnership with the ACLI. So there's 30 CEOs at the ACLI. Don't quote me on the number, but they're weighing in on this. And we had to raise, just from the FinSecca point of view, we had to raise about $1 million so we could put skin in the game, of which about $155,000 just came from the FinSecca board of directors alone. This is real, right? This is how Washington, D.C. works. So it takes money to fight a battle. If you don't believe me, just look at the amount of money that will be spent for the upcoming Senate campaigns. I believe in North Dakota, if I'm wrong on that state, but just the Pacific Northwest and some of the big Senate battlegrounds there, like you're talking about $500 million for states that are less populated than, say, New York. But that is how legislation activity is happening right now. I shouldn't say legislation. I mean, well, I guess I did tongue in cheek, but that's just
again. I can pretty much assure you that North Dakota will not be the top spending state. So
right, it will not. But the sheer fact that it is a high investment is demonstrating how a bill becomes a law, if you will. If we recall the old Saturday morning commercials. So we're up meeting on Capitol Hill. We did a fly-in last week. And I sat down with Congressman Scott from Georgia, who is one of the Democratic leaders on this, of just absolutely saying it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Secure 2.0, the NAIC, who, by the way, has weighed on this. And when do you see the NAIC weigh on anything with Congress or the regulatory bodies, such as labor and things like that? And the feedback is interesting. First, you have a Democratic congressman from Georgia saying, this is absurd. I can't believe they're going through this. So I asked him outright, will you have a vote, a no funds vote on this proposal? And despite the fact that he and colleagues across the aisle rallied up quite a few of their colleagues on a letter back to the White House and to labor about this, he said, no, I will not take a no funds vote. He did say, however, I will take a no funds vote for this proposal. Basically, and real quick, what I'm saying is, if Congress doesn't approve the funding to move it through, it's not going to happen. Now, a no funds vote is a pretty aggressive action, but that's kind of where we're at given the timing. But he did say, no, I will not take a no funds vote unless there is an impact study done. Right now, that's key, because the Department of Labor, in their research for Fiduciary Rule 3.0, is using the data from 2016. So we always talk about being data-driven decision making. Well, who makes decisions on data from 6 years ago with how the country has changed in the last, I'm sorry, not 6, 8 years ago, right? Yep, 8 years ago. It's quick math. On how the country has changed. So that's the best we got on our responses. That some of the, like, he's not going to take a hard line against the Democratic leadership, but he will take a hard line if there's a study put in play. Now, of course, we met with some colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the Republican side, and they were just as offended by this as we were. A number of them obviously are aligned with some of the brokerage agencies and advisor groups in their local constituency. So the fact that this came out, I was literally sitting with Representative Craig from Minnesota, and she wanted to call the White House immediately. Now, here's something that's not baked into this presentation. Sadly, 3 weeks ago, my father passed away, and it's my dad and I were very close. He was 85. He had a great life, but I don't care. I didn't want him to go, and his heart just gave out, and sadly, we all had to say goodbye. And now my 83-year-old mother, who successfully raised 5 successful children, is home by herself. And because I'm in the insurance space, I'm the one who gets to take a look at my dad's retirement. Now, I come from an Italian-Irish family where it doesn't matter that I'm close to 50 years old. I'm still the youngest of the family. I don't get knowledge of the numbers. That's just the way that generation worked. And I'm diving through it, and I see, roughly 20, 30 years ago, my father met with an advisor, and it was a commission-based advisor. And he, obviously got some life insurance. He secured an annuity, and he kind of had like some, and obviously his 401k and things like that. And now, granted, there was some, obviously in 2000, 2001, the market crashed. He was in a variable annuity, so things impacted, lost some money. But either way, I grew up in a very blue collar home in northeastern Pennsylvania. There's no way in hell my dad would have walked into an independent advisor and paid $4,500 of his income, also with 5 children, right? Good Italian-Irish family, and had his financial plan done for him, not to mention the other costs that would come with it. But he found this commission-based advisor, independent advisor, and his annuity, thank God, had a guaranteed life income rider for my mother. We were on pins and needles for about a week there because we had to figure some things out. And of course, my father chose an insurance company that even after 7 years in this space, I never even heard of. But it didn't matter. The guaranteed life income rider was there, and my mother is now secured at 83 years old for the rest of her life. Thank God. And I'm telling this story to Representative Craig, and she's moved by it. And I'm like, and here you are allowing this to happen, where a guy like my father probably wouldn't have walked into that space, had to, because the hurdle would have been there around buying the annuity. But now my 83-year-old mother has guaranteed income, and that resonated. And I didn't plan to tell that story. Obviously, it's even hard to try and keep it together telling that story because it's still pretty fresh for me. But that's the reality of what labor is doing with Fiduciary Rule 3.0, and not realizing how it's going to impact or who it's going to impact. And like as I said, is if the 2016 10 million Americans weren't enough, now they're back for a third bite at the apple. But again, this is why I do what I do. This is why it's noble to represent who you are, our members of FinSecca, our members of NELBA. As you can see just on the screen, there's a couple of headlines of how FinSecca came together to reunify the profession. It was bringing a number of groups together, and that's not easy, right? Independent is independent. The Forum 400, great group. They're strong to their production levels for membership. It's hard to bring these organizations together, but that's what we're doing. Hence why, we want to avoid that alphabet soup, so we can go up to the Hill like we did last week and present one image, one message, and candidly how this is impacting many consumers. What you see on your screen now is just how FinSecca approaches our membership and representing our membership. It's broken down by 4 pillars: elevate, accelerate, advocate, educate. You could see, obviously, the advocate's the easy one. It's what we're doing here today, talking about Fiduciary Rule 3.0 and what we did in the past with Reg 187. Obviously, we like to flood inboxes as much as the next person with our updates and events and things like that. Hence what Dan mentioned in his very nice introduction of me about, we've crossed paths many a times, that not just at Libra events, but various events that kind of help keep the axe sharp, because and the networking that allows. Obviously, the insights we give from FinSecca is exactly what I'm here delivering now. What's going on? What's going to happen with, this is a presidential election year, and the upcoming tax law expiration on a lot of the codes. So that'll yet be another fight for us. But this is kind of the importance of scale. This is who we are, why we've came together, our past, our present. Our present is obviously the threat from the Department of Labor. They're able to take advantage of our profession because it is fragmented. There's all these different associations out there, kind of the alphabet soup, and we needed to kind of shrink down. But ultimately, we had to come together, unite as a profession, because these threats are real. I'm sure some of the things I shared about 3.0 are not fun to listen to, nor is it fun to hear about how your government is working. I mentioned some of the events. Dan mentioned some of the events. Obviously, we have coming up the Advanced Markets Conference Wednesday in DC, May 22nd to the 24th. If you're in the advanced market space, you should be here. If you're not, there's also probably going to be the update, hence that timeline around 3.0, where it is, what we're doing. And we are fully prepared to fight it legally once again in the Fifth Circuit if our grassroots efforts do not work out. In the spirit of always be selling, if you're not a member of FinSecca, be a member of FinSecca. Dan's a member of FinSecca. Brendan's a member of FinSecca. The agency's a member of the brokerage community. Here's your opportunity. I offer just a little bit of a discount here. If you guys want to do it, you could scan that code. But Dan, that about wraps it up for me. I'm happy to take some questions or just continue the conversation. But I hope I didn't ruin anyone's lunch.
Yeah, Dan, maybe we could talk a little bit, and we'll open it up. The chat box is, we are monitoring that, so please submit a chat or unmute yourself and speak up. This is open an opportunity to talk with Dan. But I know Mark Caden, your president, the president of NAFA, CEO of FinSecca. He used the words, this is actually offensive.
Yes.
The word offensive in describing this proposal. Can you talk maybe I know you resonated with your own dad, your own father, but your mother having now lifetime income. But where is Mark coming from with that comment?
Mark has a ton of experience in Washington, obviously 20 plus years with AALU, one of the merging associations, and him having the pulse of the advocacy side of our space is spot on. I mean, I think you could apply offensive in a lot of ways, right? First off, to say commissions are junk fees right there is an offensive way to describe what many people in our profession do and how they are compensated. And that's part of the Biden agenda, where they're attacking commissions across the board. And we've seen in other countries, when you take away commissions, people don't buy life insurance, and then nobody's secured. So I think right there is a good opportunity to connect it back to offensive. I think the process in not only Mark's eyes, but my eyes and others has been offensive, where just to ramrod something through like that with no respect for religious holidays, a traditional comment period, I find it offensive that no research has been done, that they're just going to push this through. Clearly the legal at the Labor Department of Labor is hot to trot on this. So I think just holistically, it's offensive on the whole process, the verbiage being used, the way our profession is positioned. Even the Gallup poll. I mean, we're slightly above members of Congress and car salesmen, yet we're securing the lives of, as I said, widows and children. But somehow, once again, the attacks keep coming, and I think this is government affairs in motion here, and it's offensive.
Well, Dan, I think in the effort to seek to understand before being understood, Shane Nosaki has asked, can you explain more about how it would affect the actual annuity sale with a client? It sounds like, in his understanding, it may only affect 401k rollovers into IRAs. Also sounds like a PTE form, which is the prohibited transaction exemption form, which is what we used to have under 84, PTE 84-20 may only be needed. I think you touched a little bit on that, but we have some advisors looking to understand that more.
Yeah, admittedly, I that's a very deep dive on that one, and we have an entire section that we just posted around the rollovers. There's a perception that it is. There's a bit more complexity, and admittedly, I do not have the background to go into that complexity just because I don't have that experience. Fonseca itself, we did a presentation for Fonseca members that's recorded on our website that goes into a little bit deeper dive. It's the gentleman's question is accurate, but there's more complexity to it, because that's been the initial response we've been getting from a lot of people saying this is only really impacts the rollovers, and that's not entirely accurate, but it does require a deeper dive and a lot more time.
And at a minimum, it will have multiple layers of complexity. I know that is also, you've got best interest at the state level.
Yeah.
So, I'm selling a non-qualified annuity, I got best interest I have to comply with. If it's an indexed or a variable, I also have to comply with SEC or FINRA.
Right.
And if it's a qualified plan, I have to comply now with the DOL 3.0, as well as best interest. And, it just gets into multiple layers of complexity. And the whole idea that, we hear from people who do fee only, their advice creates income for them, just like the advice of selling an annuity that creates a commission. And yet, because it's a fee, or $4,500, or a fee of 1% per year, they think they're exempt from these rules. They're not either, in that sense, because if your advice is creating compensation of any form where it didn't exist before, then it's a prohibited transaction. You're not acting as a fiduciary. So you can't just disclose it away. It's really a challenge, but we'll get some more information on that.
Dan, I'll add this really quick. We've obviously Fonseca and Nelbo, we have a lot of very deep relationships into the home office at a number of carriers. And I'll tell you this, that at first, many carriers, and I'm not saying they were turning a deaf ear to it, they thought similar, that it's just another layer of compliance, and of course they'll be ready to meet it. And then they started diving in further. And the sheer fact that the ACLI has invested upwards of $5 million approximately for this effort, it's not as simple as some of the messaging out there that it only applies here and not there. But just like you described, Dan, it's layer after layer after layer, and the best interest standards are in 40 states right now. Obviously, their goal is to push it through to 50 states, and then you're going to add this on top of it. I just challenge it this way. We have to worry about our legacy, right? Our legacy as this profession. And I heard someone saying this is not validated whatsoever, but there are more advisors over the age of 70 than there are over the age, under the age of 35 or something like that. It was just one of those comments where I walked by and you kind of had to stop and take inventory on. Do you really think we're going to create a channel that when all this industry retires, that there's going to be more people to come into the space when they're walking into a space that has layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of not only securing the future, the financial security of someone, but for their own compensation? It's and candidly, then the levels of liability continue to increase, because how many boxes do you have to check when the United States Senate, United States Congress passed Secure 2.0 that covered a lot of these, quote, conflicts of interest that the Department of Labor seems to think there is?
I agree.
Dan?
I also heard, yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
First off, thank you for all the advocacy you do. Well, actually, both you, Dan.
Hey, Brendan, good seeing you, man.
Yes. Sorry to hear about your father.
Thank you.
But with your comment that you didn't know the insurance company, inquiring minds have to know what.
I'll text you.
Okay. Fair enough.
Brendan, believe me, I sent emails to the people that you would think I would send text messages to, those who sit with plenty of carriers on platforms and things like that. And rather than getting a text message back, I got a phone call saying, "Who the hell is that?" So,
well, if we see him at the next NALBA meeting,
you'll know that I quickly horse traded something into dollars.
Yes. So, well, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in wrapping it up, Dan, when I saw Commissioner Gottfried, who serves as the chairman of the NAIC, who's our North Dakota State Insurance Commissioner, write a pretty strong worded letter in the comment period, and what all the insurance commissioners in the NAIC have written regarding this proposal, when you see the insurance commissioners coming out as strongly as they have against this and this federal overreach, I think all of our people, all of our associates and advisors, we all need to make our voice heard. So thank you for raising the alarm today. I know there are ways to participate. Danielle will be sending out follow-up emails from us, from E4, that will allow you to go in and send a note or a comment to your congressman, to your senators, to your elected officials. That's the best way to reach out and be advocates, but do your part as we go forward here, because our profession, united, needs to stand strong on this. So thank you, Dan. We're going to wrap up here with a drawing for the Starbucks gift card and a CE voucher. I need you to give me a number between 1 and 32.
I will go with 16, Joe Montana.
Joe Montana. Got to see him at
the NALBA event. Yeah,
meeting.
If I wasn't man crushing enough on stage of my childhood idol.
Oh yeah, you were drooling. Yeah. I think.
16. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, but I'm a diehard young Joe Montana fan as well. So 16 it is. So hopefully someone will enjoy
16. Today's winner is Shane Nosaki. Thank you for joining today. You've got a Starbucks gift card coming your way. And next week, we'll be on the BREW again, where we'll resume our themes. Every month, we're doing a business planning theme. And next week, we have a special guest. We have a business CPA who's on the board of a top 20 accounting firm. And he will be joining us with background on buy-sell reviews, business valuation, He spent his career in valuing businesses, and we're looking forward to having a speaker from Eide Bailly on, and you'll not want to miss that. He's on the board of directors for Eide Bailly, and will be a great theme as this month we talk about buy-sell planning and buy-sell agreements and look at those features for the business clients we have. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next week on The BREW.